welcome back everyone to Let's Play Dominions 4 Thrones of Ascension with me, BrainBoy 20. You might wonder why we're back on this screen. Well, let's just say feedback for me starting this series was incredibly positive. And as such, I've received some information that might help out with doing this. For one, Action Hans gave me the comment of maybe a smaller map size would be a lot better. Because, well, as much as I would love to do Glory of the Gods, which was like nearly 600 land space, 600 spaces, it might also make it so some things might just take forever. And, well, that was a previous problem, and I would love to have it take forever, but I do understand that most of you people don't want it to do so. So I'm going to do Cradle of Dominion. I'm not going to go down to like the 20 or so province spaces of size that was recommended, but I will go for Cradle of Dominion. Okay, fine, we'll do Iran. Once Glorious Kingdom, suitable for 6 to 10 players. Enter game name, let's play as before, and we're just going to run through everything quickly. That is a normal file name, you just don't seem to understand that you can put, whatever. That's 6, right? No, that's 5. And this is just a quick rundown for anyone who skipped the first one. I'm Helheim, Dusk and Death. And we'll just recreate the god really quickly. I had Death up to 9. Start off imprisoned just because that's the way I like it. Was that 5 or 4? I know it was Order 2, 1. Growth 2 and Luck 1? No. We buffed up Magic and Dominion. Ah, that's how it was. And ditched the luck, and it was extra growth, because, well, tons of supplies is amazing in this game. And a few things that was also explained to me. Entropino had explained a few of the spells and how they worked. For example, Undying is my troops that are blessed can go into negative hit points during a battle as long as they're blessed, and they won't fall until the battle is over. Up to a certain point. If their health gets dropped below the point given to them by Undying, well, they're still dead. But they would have died anyway. And as for the name that was decided upon, Wraith6766 brought up the name Alyssa Deathwind. Let's see what other All praise Alyssa Deathwind. Oh, no titles. That's disappointing. I'm not going to do any more than one starting province, and I'm not going to mess with the strength of independence, and my history with Dominions 3, if I up the strength much higher, the game will be way too slow. Special site frequency, I like having it high. I love having tons of magic sites so I can start spamming spells. Not going to mess with any of the multipliers. I'm not going to put in story events. Random events are... I'll keep it as rare. I don't know anything about story events, so I'm going to disable those. Scroll graphs enabled so I can look at it. I like having lots of Hall of Fame entries. Having tons of heroic units running around is great. I'm going to keep the limit on unique item artifact forging. I'm not going to make it difficult. I'm actually going to make it easy. And Throne of Ascension, change the victory condition. What is this? What is Thrones of Ascension? How do I get Ascension points? Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So there are these locations that you can claim. Claim enough locations, you win. But each location you claim also gives you power. I'm assuming these thrones will be hard to get. I'm not sure if victory's owned by owning a certain number of victory points at one time. Don't know how that works. I think I'm just going to stick with the Conquer All objective. Renaming is allowed, and I will do renaming if anyone requests the name for a commander. And I think that's all the rules that'll be enabled for this. There's nothing I'm missing, right? Alright, let us enter the game. So the name generation was not the way I thought it was. In Dominions 3, you were given a bunch of titles based on the magic and basically the magic paths and the Dominion stuff that you'd selected. But now for the story messages. In the beginning, there was chaos. Out of chaos rose worlds populated with multitudes of beings. Wars were fought, kings and emperors rose and fell, and civilizations were built and crumbled as millennia passed. Gods, dark and strange, were worshipped in pagan temples. Still, there was chaos. The gods fought amongst themselves, bringing even greater ruin to those who would serve them. At last, there was one, a being of great power and enlightenment, who rose above his mortal peers and cast them out of the heavens into oblivion. From chaos came order, and with order came peace, and the creatures of the worlds flourished. The age of chaos had ended. Now the wheel has started to turn once again. The supreme god had suddenly disappeared. Prayers are left unanswered, and the smoke of offerings rises in vain to the heavens. No one knows why he disappeared, but it is certain that the people of the worlds are once again left without direction, without guiding principle, without order. Now it is time for the beings of great power and ambition to try their strength. The throne of the heavens stands empty, and only the strongest can rise to supremacy over all. Only the most powerful can ascend to take the place of he who came before. This is a time of great strife and suffering. This is a time of magic unequaled. This is the Ascension Wars. And we got a map spawn that puts us right next to this location here. As you can see, our home province is Helheim, and we have a bunch of numbers and info right here. So here's information as much as I remember how to play the game. This is our nation, and this is our current province. And this is our nation as a whole. Alyssa Deathwind is our pretender goddess. She is not here yet, because Alyssa Deathwind herself is imprisoned. Our treasury is the amount of gold we have. Gold is used for various things such as building structures and acquiring troops. Upkeep is the amount of gold we pay per turn to support our current armies, structures, and other spells and other things that might come up later. Total income is the combined income, gold-wise, of each area. Helheim is the area we have currently selected. Here's the population as shown. Here's the unrest, which will reduce tax from the province and make it harder to recruit, as it states below. Unrest is usually generated by either random events, opposing gods stirring up trouble, or just by taking a province from someone. Considering upheaval is not very great for people. Defense, province defense, are just natural defenders. Defense is a measure of how well the local militia of the province is organized. The militia defends the province. If it is attacked, the cost of increasing it is equal to the next level of defense. Local militia receives one commander at defense level 1 and an extra commander at defense level 20. The militia will patrol the province and try to capture enemy scouts. If the defense is 15 or higher, we'll explain more of that later when it starts to come into play. Resources, high resource power means that troops can be produced quickly. Supplies, feeding the troops. If you don't want to exceed supply usage over the number of supplies. Corpses, it's useful. This will come into use later. Anyway, without further ado, let's go about our business with how a normal turn progression occurs. So to start off with, we have a scout. Who are the Van Scouts? Scouts are trained to pass unseen through enemy territory. The reports on enemy army movements and the resources that enemy lands are invaluable to the prudent warlord. Vanir are masters of illusion and are very difficult to detect. We have very good scouts due to our glamour and stealthy units. As seen here, Vanir have the glamour ability, and overall this allows us to have entire stealth armies. I'm going to send Brr through. There we go. I'm going to send Brew through just to explore some of these areas. Although I think I might stick to the edge of the world for now, as if we expand outwards we might encounter an enemy before we're ready, but similarly that might let enemies just appear right on our doorstep without us knowing. Gunnar the Helkar. Well, we shouldn't discuss what troops we have until we see what we can actually recruit, and that's easily found here under the recruitment menu. Recruitment is a bit different from Conquest of Elysium if you're coming here from that series, in that when you recruit someone you have to select the province first, and then you can see what units are available to recruit. Now, up here we have the commanders that are unique to our faction. These units range from the Van Scout to a Smith the Svartalf, if you remember that from previously, Hangadrot, which is a very good mage commander, and everywhere in between. Our units are our main frontline warriors. Usually a commander will be leading a large cadre of these troops. Now, for this I'm just going to run through quickly all the troops here. We've already seen the Van Scout. Van Hers. Herses are the chiefs of the Helheim. The Van Hers is a religious leader who performs sacrifices and lesser ceremonies. Van Herses can use air magic. In battle they wear chainmail cuirasses and ride magnificent fey horses. The Van Herses of Helheim cannot sail. Van Jarl. The leaders of Helheim society are the Jarls. They are the religious leaders of Helheim and care for the sacrificial groves and administer the ceremonies. Van Jarls are closely attuned to their heritage and are skilled practitioners of air magic and illusions. The Van Jarls still remember the times when human blood was sacrificed to the gods. The Van Jarls cannot sail. Helkarl. Helkarlar are the chiefs of the Helheim and commanders of the Helheirds. The Helkarl is a religious leader who performs sacrifices and lesser ceremonies. They can use death magic. In battle they wear scale mail and ride magnificent dark fey horses. I'm just running through the unit descriptions. If you haven't already figured this out, I'll go through spells and qualities that are shared amongst all the troops here. Dis. The Dis is a female Van warrior, sorceress, and commander of the Valkyrs. Disir were blessed by a dead god in ages past and can fly. Disir wear magical scale mail armor. Hangadrot. Hangadrot is an ancient Helkarl The Hangadrot is an ancient Helkarl who had hung himself from an ash tree to gain knowledge of the dark arts. For ages they withdrew to Helhala, where the dead pass on by their way to the underworld, but they returned with the coming of a new god. A few of these ancient mages still survive, and they have great influence over the affairs of the Vanir and Helheim. Hangadrots wear magical lightweight armor. And then we have the main frontline units, Surf Warrior. The Vanir often capture humans in raids and war. These are brought home and used as serfs in the households of the Hersons. Some serfs are allowed or forced to fight for the Vanir. They are equipped with spears, shields, and leather armor. Huskarl. Huskarlar are the personal guards of the Hersons. In battle they wear ringmail halberds and wield axes and javelins. Like all other Vans, the Huskarlar have a glamour ability that tricks the enemy into not seeing what they should. Huskarls. These are just a different equipped variant. These guys have axes and shields, these guys have spears and shields. Heirdmen. Heirdmen are the elite guard of the Jarl's host. In battle they wear scale mail hauberks and wield broadswords. Like all other Vans, the Heirdmen have a glamour ability that tricks enemies into seeing what they should not. Mounted Heirdmen are a mounted elite warrior of the Jarl's Heird. They ride magnificent fey horses and are able to create illusions that hide their true selves. Valkyr. Valkyrs are the female Vanir. They're magically as strong as the male Vanir and share the ability to fuel humans with illusions. Valkyrs were granted the ability to fly in ancient times by a dead god who'd use them as messengers of death. Valkyrs still possess the power of flight and are sacred. The Valkyrs of Helhala are given magical scale mail armor by the Hangadrots. And finally, Helhirding. The Helhirding is a sacred warrior of the Helheird. The Helheird once served a dead god and could be seen as a spectral formation watching over triumphant armies, ready to slay routing soldiers. Now the Helheird served the hanged kings of Helhala. Now, common themes throughout the entirety of Helheim. Glamour ability. They cast illusions to alter their appearance. In battle, they mirror their own image. While moving, they take on the appearance of common men. These units cannot be detected by enemies while moving in their own lands, and are very difficult to spot when hiding in enemy territories. In short, I can stealth move entire armies if I wanted to. It's not always a good idea to do so, but I can. Of these, there's sacred troops. Sacred troops are extremely devoted to the god's cause. They can be blessed and only cost half the usual cost to maintain. Magic spells common to Helheim are air magic and death magic. They don't need much explanation. Priest level determines the level of priestly spells, and random magic. When you recruit mages, you have a chance of gaining extra levels of either magic you already have, or gaining a random magic spell. In this case, this one will always gain one level here of one of these 4 magic styles, air, earth, death, or blood, and it has a 10% chance of gaining a further level past that. This will come into play later when we actually start taking provinces. As for recruitment, as we don't have a massive amount of income, I'm not going to be buying tons and tons of, where the heck do you show up there? That's a new interface. I've never noticed that they actually have the little magic symbols of what they're capable of. But for recruiting units, I would love to recruit a Haggadrot. I don't have the gold for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to acquire a Helkarl. The reason for this is Gunnar... Oh, never mind, they have a good leadership. Leadership values is what's important in a commander, who you're just going to shove a ton of units with. Leadership value indicates the maximum number of troops that a commander can lead. Undead or magical beings do not count towards the normal leadership value, and can be commanded in addition to normal units. Only undead commanders and commanders with a skill in death or blood magic can command undead beings, and only mages and certain powerful monsters can command magical beings. So this gentleman can lead up to 80 normal units and 30 undead units. Now, our current army setup kind of sucks. We have about 15 units here. And these guys have a morale bonus, but that doesn't matter that much unless we're losing a fight. I'm trying not to overload people with information. So I'm not going to purchase a commander just yet. As the problem with what I want to do is that these gentlemen, this race's mages are expensive. To get a decent mage, 420 gold, 18 resources. Slow to recruit. Oh, I guess I can only recruit these like once in a while, I guess. I don't know. Regardless, what I'm going to do here is start recruiting some units. I recruit as many troops as I can, of the higher quality. Higher quality troops naturally have more hit points, protection, magic resistance, and just higher statistics than their lower variety. But they cost a lot more to make. Hopefully they just don't die instantly. Brew is going to be going around here searching these areas to see if we can find any information on what independents lay in those areas, so we can see what to attack. And that was our recruitment. We don't have any supplies, or we don't have any resources left. And as such, I can't actually make any more troops if I wanted to. As such, we're going to move on to something else. Magic. If I had anyone doing any research, like I can have Gunnar do some research right now. Which, while we're waiting, I'm going to have him do research. Actually, no. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to have him search for magic sites. I guess I'll go on to this. Any magic site or structure will show up in the bottom right corner of the screen, here where the mouse cursor is. As for the starting location, you will always have a fortress of some kind, which will explain the fortress statistics later. A laboratory, which I can't select for some reason. A temple, which spreads your dominion. And just allows you to protect your dominion from other gods' dominions, which is always good. And then we have the faction-specific magic sites. Helhala enables recruitment of Valkyr, Helhirding, Dis, Hangadret, and produces 1 air gem per turn. And Nipalahan, which produces 4 death gems per turn, produces 1 earth gem per turn, and allows the recruitment of Svatalf. Speaking of which, can I actually recruit one? Because I know some have very low resource costs. I would, but I would have to wait. Does that not count anything? Slow to recruitment makes it so it takes a turn to bring in. But I can still produce them for some reason. Oh, you only take 1, right? Okay. It's better to spend your money to get troops immediately, rather than just store it up, because you're never going to be able to spend all your gold instantly in this game. Anyway, I'm going to have Gunnar search, because sometimes, rarely, there'll be extra magic sites in the area which he might be able to reveal while we're waiting for us to do some recruitment and for some information. Aside from that, other things I could have him do. I could have him demolish forts, I could have him construct buildings, but there's no reason to construct it. I could have him do a blood hunt, which is used for blood magic, search for magic sites. I could empower him to improve his magical abilities. I can have him turn magic gems into astral pearls or some gems into gold. I could have him forge magic items, of which we don't have the ability to produce any right now, except for the Skull Talisman, because he's only skilled in death magic. I could have him cast ritual spells, we don't know any yet. I could have him research, which is something I probably should have him do. For sacred stuff, which is your priestly dealings, I can have him preach the teachings of God, which helps spread domain. I could have him perform blood sacrifices, which helps spread the god's domain over the world. I could have him become my prophet, which he will basically become a mini-me, and I might have one of them do that soon, once I get a decent commander. And then I can have him do the generic commander movements. Move him to a location, tell him to defend a place, patrol the province, which lowers unrest, move normally, and I gotta have him pillage to find food for an army and as much gold as possible. I'm gonna have him search for magic sites, even though usually there isn't any. There are also mercenaries. If I want to, I can attempt to hire this gentleman, although I have just enough to put a bid out. And usually you want to attempt to hire mercenaries. I'm going to put down 40 gold, even though I don't have much more in my treasury to support this gentleman. He'll be hired for several months and basically becomes this miniature army that I can shove around the place. Now, more things on the side. So we've done this, we've done recruitment, army setup. There's research, of which we don't have any resource points yet. And with research, you can research a bunch of spells, which is what research is primarily used for. I don't have any research going on just yet. Until I have that level of research, until I have some research going on, I'm not going to bother with that at all. Then there are messages. You can read the messages at the start of the turn. Statistics, which is the score graph, nation overview, Hall of Fame. There's no one in it yet because Hall of Fame is kills and kill-based. There are map filters, and there's also the end turn button, which I think I'm going to do right now because I think you guys are going to get annoyed if I keep this turn going any longer. Gunnar has searched a hellhunt for magic sites but found nothing. A proclamation from Akrosfal. Sverkios, the Myrmidon champion, shall hereby be known as the Prophet of Skylar. These proclamations are all prophets, which I'm not going to read through all of them. Victors of villains have been bought and will fight for our cause this and 2 more months. So you can see Gunnar, who's a very terrible mage, searched this place for a priestly site at level 1 and a death site at level 1 and found nothing. But now that we have access to some information, we can start to somewhat plan out where we want to go. So Gunnar is going to take this troop, put it in, and create a small group here. Are these guys any different? Are these both Surf Warriors? These are Huskarls. The Surf Warriors will be placed in the front lines, slightly behind him. And the Herdman will also be here. Victor the villain. These guys ranged. He'll be joining us. I'd like to get him killed off soon. But anyway, now that we have a decent amount of troops, as evidenced by these 2 swords, which increases with the number of troops you have, I'm going to send Gunnar here, and Victor, I'm also going to move him in to go and fight. He's also got some experience. Interesting. From this place, Brew will move through to these locations. I want to capture all these areas right next to it, because the fortification has administration. A high administration value means that the castle will be able to gather more resources from neighboring provinces and tax the province more efficiently. It will also provide extra supplies for nearby troops, though the supply bonus decreases as troops leave the vicinity of the castle. Gives us supply storage, time to build cost is that much defense, how much damage it can withstand before it's able to break through the gate, and there are extra buildings, which I have no idea about. Extra buildings is something entirely new to me, and I'm going to have to figure this out later. Interesting. So this just provides extra defenses and more administration. And gives abilities to attack defenders. Alright. Anyway, so income happened, upkeep also happened, so our treasury is fairly low. But this will increase as time goes on as we capture more provinces. Now, for the early game, I always want to be recruiting if possible. So I'm going to actually do a little bit of recruitment, even though this is really expensive. I'm going to recruit some Valkyrs and prepare, because Valkyrs tended to be a crucial part of my strategy. And we'll soon have Svartal to do some research and forging once he's done recruiting at the end of next turn. And turns will start going by much faster now that there's nothing else to do. I'm still their employer, but I have no money to give them, and they're already working for me and I expect them fully to die. Now we get to have our first battle. Proclamations have occurred, more prophets have created, and there was a battle in the Forest of the Lost, of which we get to see... Wow, okay, this is a lot more in-depth than previously. But we can see that it was a victory. But I might as well show you how a battle looks, so let's view the battle. This is our army here. As you can see, Huskarls have their glamour ability, which makes him have like a mirror image-like effect, so when they attack it, there's like a small chance to miss. And Gunnar, being a priest, is casting Blessing, but there's no holy troops to affect, other than himself, and as such he now has death weapons. All enemies hit by this suffer extra damage and are diseased if they fail a magic resistance, which will also be more important. And here are the independents, which contain archers, a few commanders, and these levies and militia. And while our serfs might die, they're meant to protect the Herdmen and Huskarls. Unlike Conquest of Elysium, melee troops are a lot more effective than ranged, and you can get by using a pure melee army, which is great. Because beforehand in Conquest of Elysium, you had to deal with the fact that most of your army would die before actually hitting the opponent. And in this case, you can deal with movement values, troop placement, and otherwise it makes it so your melee troops can be a lot more effective. And spellcasters will also not have a chance of just randomly destroying your own army, aside from very specific spells. And you also saw what kind of tends to happen with battles here, is that both sides fight until one side's morale breaks, and then they run away and go die in a fire. So we now have a new area, the Forest of the Lost. There's nothing here except for the fact that this is a really good resources, and a fair amount of unrest. Now, with this amount of treasury that we have, I will also continue researching here, and Surt has really high magic and really high research. Svartalf is a dwarf of sinister nature. Like all dwarves, they shun the daylight and prefer to live in deep caves and work their wonders. Svartalfs have fled the advance of man and found refuge in the hills near Nifahalan, where the dead pass by and the Haggadot's reign. Svartalfs are old practitioners of dark magic, but not as skilled mages of earth as their dwarven cousins. But what's more important is that he has really high research. As such, the research screen matters heavily. We also have a fair amount of gold with us now, because we've gained a new province. As such, I'm actually going to get a Haggadot, because I want to make a Haggadot my prophet, because he's a very powerful spellcaster, in addition to having very high skills and otherwise. And I will also spend more money on just some Valkyrs. No Herdmen, though, because I have more use for that. What I'm going to do here is that I'm going to buy some province defense, which will give us a Van Hurst defender, and these assorted infantrymen, which I can't really remove or move around, but that doesn't matter that much. But that's nice I can actually see these these province defenders and what they're supposed to be. And because of these guys fighting, they've actually made it into the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame, anyone who makes it onto the Hall of Fame, you'll get to see their statistics so you can get kind of an idea of what those people are. But you also get to see kills, and I think you also get to see what the heroes are. No, you have to own them to see what the heroes are. But when they're on the Hall of Fame, you get a heroic ability. Heroic ability can be basically anything. This gentleman got heroic precision. And heroic precision usually shows up elsewhere. No, it shows up here with attack skill. Defense skill? Oh, right here. Precision. Precision represents the targeting skill of the unit. Precision is only used when firing missile weapon or casting spells. The higher the value, the more likely that the projectile or spell will hit the intended target. Normal human soldiers have a precision value of 10. Units rarely have values above 15 unless they have a heroic ability. The longer that Gunnar remains on the Hall of Heroes, on the Hall of Fame, his heroic ability will keep increasing, making precision extremely high at some points. And I guess now that we're dealing with heroic abilities, I might as well go through the generic explanations of all these things. Hit points represents the amount of damage a unit can withstand before dying. Ordinary humans has 100, it has 10. Giant has about 30. Dragons typically have over 100. And they also have sizes, which is unit size. Ah well, big whoop. It matters for very few things. Protection indicates the thickness of any armor or natural armors and toughness. Protection value is subtracted from the attacker's strength and weapon damage when calculating the total effective damage on the target. Light infantry, 3 to 10. Knights have 20 or more. He's somewhere in between. And protection also has differences based on body or head, so striking him in the head is much harder than striking him in the body. Magic resistance. Some spells can be resisted and avoided by targets with an iron will. Magic resistance can indicate how well a unit can resist such spells. Higher magic resistance, better it is to protect against spells, unless there's spells like Fireball or Lightning which cannot be resisted. Normal human soldiers have values of around 10. 10 is generally the baseline. Morale. Unit's morale represents the courage and valor of a unit. Every time something demoralizing happens to a unit, its morale is checked. A unit checks its morale every time it receives damage or if a member of its squad dies. Each individually failed morale check results in morale reduction of the entire squad. The probability that a squad will rout is based on the total squad morale reduction relative to the size of the squad. At the beginning of the battle, all squads with morale reduction make a rout check based on the average morale of the squad. Failure results in the squad routing from the battlefield. And special monsters such as the Walking Dead have morale values of 50. This is a symbolic number that means they never flee, but will dissolve if left with no commander. All units that have not gone berserk will rout automatically when all commanders are dead or have left the battlefield. Undead and magical beings will rout if they are left without a proper commander, i.e. a necromancer or a mage. Fun, isn't it? While inside a friendly domain, morale is just boosted. So you always have the home field advantage. So we've got information on this place. It's a slightly higher defense, and Beer will move on to the next location. But we're going to quickly move along. Victor's heroic ability is heroic quickness, which is better because it increases the number of action points. And wow, I just skipped right over this stuff. Strength represents physical might of a unit. High values indicate that a unit can damage even heavily protected troops. I don't need to check the armor. Attack skill. Attack skill unit indicates the ability to hit an opponent in melee combat. Attack skill is added to the value when attacking. If the attack value is higher than the unit's defense value, the strike will most likely hit the defender. Elite soldiers with more battle experience might have things of 15. And one-handed is reduced by the sum of the weapon's lengths. So it's much more effective to fight with 2 daggers than it is with 2 long swords. Makes sense. Defense skill is obviously the opposite of attack skill. Encumbrance is important. Encumbrance value indicates how fatigued a unit will get from 1 round of melee combat. Encumbrance value is strongly affected by the amount and weight of an armor that a unit is wearing. Spellcasting as armor is very demanding, and the caster suffers from twice the normal armor encumbrance. Some magically animated units have an encumbrance value of 0. This means the unit will never get exhausted from melee combat. Spellcasting will result in the normal amount of fatigue even for units with 0 encumbrance. If they reach above a certain level of encumbrance, the unit will either become stunned or fall unconscious. I don't know the exact proper term. And fatigue is basically... Fatigue is the physical measure of the encumbrance. Fatigue exceeds 100, falls dazed or unconscious to the ground, is unable to move, attack, or defend. Movement. Okay, there we go. Base action points. Action points limit the amount a unit can move and attack each turn. When it reaches 0, it can no longer act during that turn. Moving around uses a portion of the unit's allotted AP, while a melee attack, missile attack, or consumes all of that AP for the turn. This gentleman has a lot of AP, so can move very fast, but isn't very useful because he's a mercenary, so I kind of want him to go die in a fire, if that's all possible. Anyway, let's move on. The province defense here isn't as high as I want it. I usually like it around 10, but that's also really expensive. So what I usually use for the province defense is to reduce the unrest so I can get the full benefits of the income. Furthermore, because we captured this location, our domain has spread there a little bit, which will generally increase the order, farmland, and otherwise, which will slowly increase its income as the domain continues to strengthen itself and the effects of my domain continue to grow. Now, you can recruit units there immediately, but most of them are actually pretty worthless. Like, the archers are okay. I can recruit some archers here, but I also have to point out that the resources are very small. So while I can recruit some units if I had the gold, I generally reserve the recruitment for the main force until I can actually just do a full round of recruitment here and still have gold left over and not have anything else to spend it on. So while Seward's doing research, I can at least show you some of the structures and such we can produce. Structures? What structures? I meant to say items that we can produce, maybe as a little bit of an ending thing, because we're starting to get close to time. So, because Svart has a fair amount of death magic and earth magic skill, he has a fair amount of things he can produce. Skull Talisman we've seen beforehand. These artifacts are non-unique. You can produce any number of them as long as you have enough gems to support it. Anyway, Skull Talisman, one of the earliest death items you can produce. Skull Talisman grants the wearer the ability to animate skeletal warriors during combat. In addition, one skeleton will guard the wearer of the talisman at all times. That is important if people are using assassins. Armor, black steel plates, made from black ferrous alloy capable of incredible strength or durability. If I were showing you what armor they were wearing, you'd see that while this thing encumbers you by a lot and reduces the defensive value, the protection it provides is extreme. Like, you remember seeing Gunnar, and he had like a protection value of 11 for his body. This nearly doubles it. And this one's the black steel plate, which has less encumbrance and has still more protection, which is better for like cavalrymen. Black steel helm, no defense, no encumbrance effect, but protection of 24. Earth gems and items and stuff like that are really strong. Kite shields, usually used by mounted troops. Defense parry ability, which is used to deflect incoming attacks. which parry is parry, I believe combat goes like this. Attack, melee skills check versus defense, parry defense, then parry effects in melee, armor, and then damage resolution. I think. Don't quote me on that. Someone will probably correct me, in which case I'll give you a small shout out and say thank you for it. I actually prefer being corrected than just being outright wrong. Sword of Sharpness. You get to see its damage type and how much damage it deals. Sword with extraordinarily sharp blades. This blade will cut through most armor. And then we also have Stinger and other weapons like this, which you can just take a look-see. Now, I know I've had him doing some research last turn. No, I haven't. I guess now with this small setup here and with nothing else to do, for the final portion, you're not sneaking. Because they're naturally stealthy and a part of a stealth army, if I just click to move him anywhere, he'll be stealthed. That's not good. I don't want him to be stealth moving because that means he won't be joining the actual battle with Gunner, and I kind of would like him to be a part of the actual combat so his archers would do something. Anyway, on to the final thing for this episode, research. Research, I get to look at these spells well beforehand and just kind of see, does it synergize well with me or not? And some things don't have actual synergization, or actual synergy that you notice until you see things like construction of lesser items. And some of these magic paths are much stronger later in the game than they are earlier. As of right now, I'm just going to look for something with a fair amount of death magic and earth magic at the same time. Which in this case seems like they actually selected a fairly decent thing with enchantment, because then I can get a lot of magic spells that he can utilize, such as Animate Dead and Reanimation. I could do blood magic, but there's no point. So yeah, I think I'll stick with enchantment for these ritual spells. And don't worry, if you pick up this game just blind and decide to play it along with me for some ungodly reason, do not worry, you can eventually just get all magic paths for any commander through empowerment, but that'll come much later when we have tons of magic sites. Anyway, I think we've done all recruitment that we possibly can. We have our person doing research. We have this guy moving along to capture this location so we can get more resources and more income. And with that, I think we'll end the episode here. I hope you've all enjoyed watching. This is the very first turn of Dominions for Thrones of Ascension with me, BrainBoy20. And I am signing off. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I like interacting with you people. And I hope to see you all next time.